Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Kenny Brown Cars and Coffee Show. We're changing the name a little bit. Did you notice that? Today we have a great lineup. In fact, the lineup is one person. We have a special guest expert, Donny Walsh from D&D Performance, and he will be with us talking transmission tech, clutch tech, driveline tech. So if you have your questions on any of those subjects, make sure you add them to the comments. And we're looking forward to hearing a little bit about his background and some tech from him. So Brad, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I hear
hello from sunny Daytona Beach.
Yes.
Actually, I'm in Ormond Beach. I'm in Ormond Beach, which is the birthplace of speed, as many of you know. But we're connected to Daytona Beach, and of course, we have the famous 24 hours of Daytona happening this weekend. The race kicks off in just a few hours here, so that's pretty exciting. There's a lot of friends and family in town for the race this weekend. And we're really enjoying it. We had dinner last night with longtime Kenny Brown customer Steve Post and his wife Lisa from Chicago, Illinois. Also met up with Jim Shaw, who's an old friend of ours that did some work with us in the past. Saw a lot of old people that I haven't seen in a while. Jack Rouse Jr. was at the hotel, and a few others, Michael Shank. So that we got the whole crew in. The racetrack is packed. The infield is sold out. It's going to be a phenomenal race. It's going to be live on TV, at least some portions of it. But if you have Peacock, you can view the whole entire race on the Peacock channel. So it's an exciting weekend for us here.
Well, that's great. I love the Daytona. Kenny and I did the Daytona race a number of times, and those are a couple stories I can share a little bit later. But if you're just joining us today, we are talking transmission tech, and we have special guest expert Don Walsh with us from D&D Performance, and you can ask him all your transmission, clutch, driveline questions, and he should be able to answer those for you. I know it's hard to get those questions answered, and he will be able to do that. So make sure you put your questions in the comments. And let's see who's here today. It looks like Tim Allen. Good to see you. Dylan. We know all of you. Steve Smith, Tim Allen. Wow, don't want to miss this episode. Yes, we have been waiting patiently, haven't we, to meet with Donny. Also, Herstifer, if you're not familiar with Cars and Coffee, he is joining us from Bulgaria. He's one of the Speed Therapy Academy members. Joe Johnson is also a Speed Therapy Academy member. Good morning, Joe. And also Fred Francher. And I am going to show Fred sent me the Mustang. I might just show it right now. So this is what came in the mail to me. Brad, do you want to put me on full screen? There we go. This is what came in the mail to me from Fred Francher. It's the Mustang's Times magazine, the MCA magazine, and they did a big story on one of the outlaw cars that Kenny built. And this one in particular is a convertible. We did a number of convertibles, and so it's a really interesting story, and it really ties in with the tribute cars that we're building. So we are building Kenny Brown tribute cars from each era of Mustang. So for the Fox body, we're building outlaw Mustangs. For the SN95, we're building Cobras. And for the S197, we're building tribute cars for the GT4 RS. So it's pretty interesting. Also for the S550, we're building like a Maryland car as well. So if you are interested in tribute cars, just reach out to us and we'll talk to you a little bit more about it. We haven't announced it officially yet, but you are first to know. Looks like Greg Drake's with us. Bob Jones, good to see you. Tony Kickercamp. Jorge is with us. JL and Tim Thomasak. Wow, we're getting quite a few people here. If you're joining us today, please put your name in the comments so we can see who's here with us. And if you're just joining us, we're talking transmission tech. And Brad, let's talk a little bit about the giveaway that we have for today. We have a weekly sweepstakes, as you know, a giveaway for people that are attending live. And Brad, you want to tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Don Jr. has been gracious enough to provide us with a D&D Performance t-shirt. I think he also has a hero card that he's going to throw into the mix as well. When Don Jr. comes on, we can have him show those to you. Rather than type something in the comments and we pick a number, we've got a trivia question for everyone today. I don't know, Cari, if you want to have me ask the trivia question now.
Yeah, let's ask it now. Let's ask it now. I think that's good. And then we'll ask it again in the middle of the show in case we have some late joiners.
Okay, so you guys will probably have to go to Google. So we'll see who can type the fastest. But the question is what year was the manual transmission first introduced? So first use of a manual transmission. This goes back at least a decade. That's a hint. And it was developed and used by somebody that has a very unusual last name that some of you will be familiar with as well. So what was the first year that the manual transmission was introduced? That's going to be our trivia question. And so there'll be two winners today. So you better get typing. Greg Drake's already answered the question and he's wrong.
Okay,
so
we'll have to harass you next week during the Speed Therapy Academy alumni meeting.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. So I'll see Greg next Wednesday night for the alumni meeting. I did want to do some housekeeping. I've got a couple of things. If you're viewing on Facebook, be sure to like or give us a like. You can also leave a comment in the comment section if you have questions for Don Jr. Once he goes live. You can also, if you're viewing on Facebook, in lieu of giving us a thumbs up, you can give us the heart-shaped wrench, which is one of our favorites. If you're viewing on YouTube, be sure to like the video. If you're not subscribed to our channel, be sure to subscribe to the Kenny Brown channel. When you do, a little bell will appear next to the subscribe button. If you click that bell, that'll allow you to get notifications for every time we go live, if we load a short, if we load a tech video. It's a great way to stay in touch with us. And I've got a couple of other things today. We've got two birthdays today that I wanted to mention from longtime loyal viewers and Kenny Brown brand fans. The first one is Del Hughes, who is one of the founders of Track Guys Driving Schools and a longtime friend of the family. And the second one is short wheelbase Thunderbird owner Jeff Jacobucci, who just so happens to be here in Daytona Beach. He's not going to be able to join us today for the live broadcast because he is overseeing pre-race tech for all of the cars that are running today. So just want to wish those two guys a happy birthday. We've got some other viewers that have joined us as well. We've got the Tennessee Valley Mustang Club from Clinton, Michigan. So I have a suspicion that is
Tennessee. That's Clinton, Tennessee.
Yeah, or Clinton, Tennessee. And I think, who is that, Cari? Bob or Brian West, I think. I think that's Brian West.
Okay, Brian West.
And then we have Brian Hutchins. We've got a couple of Facebook users who've popped up. I can't see their names. And that looks like about it as far as people who've commented so far. And there are a couple of people who have already gotten the trivia question correct. So we'll mention those folks later. There's 2 or 3 people who have chimed in, and Dylan chimed in with an interesting piece of trivia himself. So we'll get to that later on in the show. Why don't we go ahead, Cari, and you can finish your housekeeping, and then we will introduce Donny Jr.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. So I think I'm going to go right into Don Jr. because this is such an interesting person and he has so much knowledge to share. So we want to make sure we give him the time that is allowed. But anyway, Don Jr., if you've I'm sure you've heard of them. Don Jr. Senior or Don Jr. Don Jr. because they are big in the drag racing scene. They've competed nationally for a whole bunch of different things. But Don, they have a really interesting background, and they own D&D Performance, which is primarily transmissions and clutches and everything related to the driveline. So he's going to be able to share a lot about that, and has a real interesting past, and we'll talk to you a little bit about his dad as well. So Don, I'm going to have you join me right now. So,
well, good morning. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. As I'm so happy you could join us. Like I said, we've been waiting for you to join us, and we're excited. And I know we had a little flub about a month or so ago, and we figured out the technology flub was on our end. So, but everybody's used to that. So welcome. And I want to ask you a little bit about how you started in the industry, because I know it didn't just start when you started working like in the industry, but you grew up in the industry. Is that correct?
Yeah, I always tell people I didn't have much of a choice whether I was going to be involved in this industry, whether it be racing or the transmission industry. From a very young age, my parents got me involved in racing. I was racing a snowmobile when I was 2.5 years old. Wow. And to the point where the only thing I knew how to do was hold it wide open. So they'd have to hold the back of the sled up and drop it when they flagged the race. And then my dad would have to be on the other end, and he'd have to pick the back end of the sled up because I'd just keep going. So
wow.
That started at 2.5, and I went on to do several other things. We've raced BMX bikes quite a bit as a young kid, and then got into drag racing. And then I've drag raced most of my life. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that we actually took a little bit of a break from drag racing and got into a little bit of road racing. And so I chose to race a Spec Miata because it was a really competitive class, and I thought it would be good to learn how the dynamics of driving a road race car, since all I had done is had a parachute before that. So we did that for a while, and we actually won a championship racing the Spec Miata. So we did become successful with that as well. So
cool.
So we've raced everything from 100 horsepower cars to 4,000 horsepower pro mods, NHRA pro mods. So it's I've had a very fortunate career in racing, and then fortunately, my dad and I decided to open up D&D back in 1990, okay. And it was a pretty simple equation when we started it. We started it so that I had a steady job while I was in college, and my dad would have some extra money to go racing. So he worked at Ford Racing, and back then it was Ford Motorsport. And when he was doing that, he wanted that money, I guess, went to the household, and then the D&D money was to go racing. So it was it started in a basement. And 33 years later, we're still doing it. So it's pretty exciting.
That's great. That is awesome. And I know that I want to just share right now with that your dad unfortunately passed like beginning of December. So
yes.
I don't know if it's too raw for you to talk about, but yeah.
No, it's obviously, I miss him terribly. However, my dad and I had so much great time together with running a business for 33 years together. We got time that a lot of people don't ever get to have. So I have to, right now I have to focus on the positives there. And also that when my dad passed, he was 85 years old. He had a wonderful life, had a very storied career and life. So
yes, I remember him well. Him and your mother, Roxy, used to stop by when they were in Indy. We'd have dinner together, either at our house or out for dinner. And it was always fun times. I mean, we actually talked about going We never did this, but going over to Europe to attend one of the F1 races. So we thought it would be fun to do the whole circuit together. So
and they both love racing, every type of it. Like you like I said, we started out snowmobile racing. They raced boats. My mom held a record for the fastest woman in an unblown jet boat for several years. And she did that in a boat that my dad campaigned. And so it's pretty cool. My sister raced. Really, it's always been a family thing. So
I think that's great. And the just working with, having a dad that worked at Ford Motorsport or Ford Racing that must have been just an experience in itself, all the stories you bring home and probably exposure to the inner workings of Ford. So
absolutely. And just to see how things have grown. It's been really neat over the years to see how a program that was relatively small back when my dad went to that program to where it ended up or where it's become today is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's impressive. I know Kenny, he had a number of his engineer friends, and I could name the names, and you probably don't know them all personally, but your dad, Don, was one of his favorites to go and visit every time he went to visit the Ford Racing, Ford Motorsports division. So that was always fun for him. So I want to just kind of ask you a couple other questions too. I think you answered quite a few of them already, but one thing before we get into the tech questions, I want to ask you, how does somebody get in touch with you, D&D Performance?
So you can email us at info@ddperformance.com. You can call us at 248-735-6220. Or you can, we do also have an Instagram page. It's D_D_performance.
Okay.
So those would be all the best ways to get a hold of us.
Okay. What was your phone number again? Because I'm going to put that in the comments after Brad takes over.
248-735-6220.
Okay, great. We'll put that in your website, and I'm sure people will be calling you on a number of things. So I have one more question before I hand it over to Brad. He's going to do the tech side of it. Do you have any really interesting stories? Any stories that pop in mind that were fun with that you had over the years? I'm sure there's tons of stories.
Probably one of the stories I'd like to share, especially in lieu of my dad not being here anymore, is just the fact that in my dad's storied career, he actually started out out in California. He worked for TRW and Rocketdyne. And one of the sayings in our business that said a lot is, this isn't rocket science, what we do all the time. And it used to be funny because everybody would say, oh, this isn't rocket science. And people would say, he really is a rocket scientist. He worked on the lunar descent module. So that's just a story I wanted to share, because a lot of people, when you're in a certain industry, they think that those people have always been in that industry. And this was a case where my dad started out in several different industries before he settled into to the automotive industry. So
wow, that's awesome. He is an incredible man, and I'm so thankful to know you as well. Before we do you have the T-shirt that we're going to be giving away? Do you have that next to you?
I don't have it right here. Hey, you know what? Here, I can show you the back of this.
Okay.
Of this one. I don't know if you can see it.
No one cares. Work harder. Yep, that's it. Okay, so
that's kind of a slogan around here, is not to worry about other people, and just get to work and do a better job than anybody else. So
that's kind of our philosophy around here as well. We don't have that slogan, but I may steal it from you. So anyway, Donnie's going to be, for our weekly giveaway, Donnie's going to be giving away a T-shirt with that on, as well as a autographed hero card. So he'll be signing that for you, and then we'll be sending it off to the winner. Again, if you've just joined us, the question is, Brad, you may have to come on and ask the question. It's just so people know what's going on in the comments. Brad, can you ask the question again for a winner?
Yeah. And so several people have gotten the question correct, but the trivia question for today is, what year was the manual transmission first introduced? And this is not first introduced in the Mustang. This is first introduced in the automotive world. And so like I said, a couple of people have gotten the question correct, but it wasn't in the 1900s, and it wasn't in America, and it wasn't on an American car. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. People can continue
Cool.
to
And
look it
I
up.
have a story to share with the panel. I should say with the answer, a Kenny answer. So I want to share that with you guys later as well. So we will be doing that. Let's see some thumbs up for Donny or comments, welcoming him to our show today. If you like what he's saying, we're probably going to have him back because there's too much knowledge to share within an hour. So anyway, Brad, I'm going to have you take it away and ask Donny some questions.
Okay. All right, Don. So let me add you to the stream here. Okay. So the first question, I'll start off easy. What are the primary differences when building a transmission for, let's say, street versus road race versus drag race? I mean, there are three different approaches, three different use types. And I'm assuming that you would approach building a transmission or recommending a transmission, based on the use. So what are the differences, street, road race, and drag race?
So the biggest differences between those would be whether the transmission was synchronized or if it was a face-plated or pro-shifted unit. Basically with a pro-shifted or a dog box, that's something that you would use in a road race car. That's a super serious car that you can control the ignition and whatnot to make the shifts. Then the synchronized transmission would be the most common transmission, and you can use that in all three applications. It's just to a certain point, and then guys want to go to something that they can use without a clutch. So the synchronized transmission is the one that we work with the most here. And like I said, that kind of spans across all of the street strip, the track day cars, and a lot of the road race cars, the rules make it where you have to run a synchronized box.
Okay, you mentioned something interesting that I want you to elaborate on a little bit more, particularly from an engineering standpoint. And you mentioned a dog box transmission, which I believe is also referred to commonly as using straight cut gears. Can you tell us, what does that mean? What is the science behind the dog box or the straight cut gears, and what are the major benefits of that? Where is it most commonly used?
So the dog box isn't so much that doesn't have so much to do with the straight cut gears. The straight cut gears are designed more for a race car. They're the strongest gear, but they are not, they're very noisy. So most street car guys don't want to utilize a straight cut gear transmission. As far as the dog box goes, or what I would call today as a face plated or a pro shifted unit, would be, it does not have a synchronizer. It basically has lugs that when you interrupt the ignition, it allows the transmission to go into that gear. But it also, with doing that, it also it's not nearly as nice to drive on the street. It's designed for wide open shifts, basically a race box.
Okay, gotcha. So that was a good explanation there. I guess the next question is, what's your best advice on choosing the right transmission for your application? But also I want to talk about gears and gear ratios based on the use or application. There's a lot of choices available. Transmissions can also be, I guess, custom spec'd, or they could be rebuilt. from their factory specifications, the way it comes from Tremec, let's say. Can you talk a little bit about, choosing the transmission for you, and then how you choose gear ratios, and kind of go a little in depth on that as well?
Yeah. So when it comes to transmissions and ratios, you obviously, it has a lot to do with the vehicle's usage, the vehicle's weight, the vehicle's power level. And you have to put all that together and figure out what is going to be best for the customer. We have customers that would like a car that has a longer first gear for the street if they are tire limited and they have quite a bit of power. Then we're going to run, a longer first gear in that transmission. Then we have guys that if they're going to the drag strip and they want the best 60 foot they can get, that we may find that that same power level, they want a different ratio for it. So I think it's really important to know a customer's goals with their car, and then know as much information about their car, whether it be the weight, the ratios, the rear end ratio, and then also their usage for it. So that is a super important part. The next thing is making sure that somebody buys the right transmission for their car. Sometimes you want people to have what they should buy, so they don't buy it 2-3 times. And so I think it's important for people to look at what their real needs are. One of our things here, whether it be in the performance shop where we build cars, or whether it be for the transmission, I always try to talk to customers, and it's very hard. I know that none of us always know our end goals with our cars. And sometimes we don't know how far we're going to take the cars, but we do have a decent idea of ourselves and what we think we're going to do. And I think it's important when someone calls me or calls on D&D, it's always important for us to know where they want to end up. And then that way we can try and alleviate them buying those parts several times so that they get what they need. And down the road, they're very happy with what we've suggested and what they're using.
Okay, so a question on, I guess in Mustangs and in road racing or open track use, which most of the people viewing today, they're all road race guys. They're diehard open track junkies. Some of them use a 5-speed transmission. Some of them have a 6-speed transmission. For a road race application, can you go through specifically how the gear ratios would lay out, say 1st through 5th or 1st through 6th? Is there a general rule of thumb? Is there a personal preference, or maybe something you found that works best? What are these gear ratios? We talk about this ratio: 1st gear, 2nd gear, 3rd gear, 4th gear, 5th gear, or even 6th gear. Can you kind of give us the lay of the land there? What is the rule of thumb? How do you do this?
So when it comes to a road race car, there isn't as much of a right answer on gear ratios, because the track depicts what those ratios need to be. And all we're looking for is in crucial spots in the racetrack that you're in the right gear, and that you don't run out of gear right before a corner. You don't run out of, or you don't have to short shift, and whatnot. So that's what you're looking for. And it's funny because I built a T1 Corvette and ran it some, and I had to run 2 different transmissions, whether I was at a local track that we have here, Waterford Hill, or we went to Mid-Ohio. And it was based on the 3-4 shift it was slow down with one ratio at Waterford. That ratio did not work. We were going into a corner at a certain speed where you'd have to make the shift mid corner in like 100-mile-an-hour corner. Well, you don't want to have to do that. So that's it's really important picking the ratios. That type, when you get really down to it into a race car, you it's hard to pick the ratios unless you know that racetrack, you know where you're at, you know the speed the car goes. That's almost, you really have to learn that. You have to take the car out, see what it likes, and pay attention to that fact that, you know, hey, I had to put it in fourth gear before this corner and it was just a dog coming out of the corner. Well, then we might want to change that ratio. So, and then after that, fifth gear ratio becomes really important at some of those tracks, whereas some of them you never get out of fourth gear. But if you're going to be shifting into fifth gear, you want to have that ratio that the car will still pull.
Okay, great. So that's really, really good information. That's what I thought you were going to say. In rail racing, we pull the transmissions out, we take them apart, and we change the gears before we get to the track, or we'll learn something when we're at the track, and then obviously you're in the gearbox or the transmission, making, you know, some subtle changes. And when it comes to gear ratios in the transmission, that obviously has a direct correlation to your final drive ratio as well. And I'm assuming there might be some scenarios where, as opposed to changing the gearing in the transmission, you could change the final drive gear, you know, to help make things better, depending upon what track you're at. How do you look at that?
Well, I would say that once you find a transmission ratios that work for your combination, for your engine, for your horsepower level, and they work pretty well, then you can fine tune it with that rear end ratio. And that is one of those things. I left that out on just discussing that between the different tracks, but that was the same thing. We also carried in the trailer, we carried a 373, a 390, and a 410 ring and pinion. And then that way we could always change that to fine tune that. We find on street cars that we do a lot of the street strip and the track day cars. That is the easiest way to make the car work exactly how the customer wants to. But we do have to take into account that they still want to have an overdrive. Typically when they buy the 6-speed, they want to have that usable fifth gear, but they also want to have the deep overdrive so that it's a viable daily driver, or, you know, something that they can utilize past just racing. Okay,
great. So next question is, and we'll have a lot of questions about clutch, and I would consider you to be more of a clutch expert than myself, certainly. But how does the transmission type or the use of the transmission relate to the type of clutch that you should run? Street, open track, drag race?
So there's all kinds of things when it comes to a clutch. I feel that the clutch selection is the most important thing that somebody can do with their car. And one of the things I always pose, one of the questions I pose to our customers is, when you walk out in the garage in the morning, do you pick the car or do you not pick the car because of the clutch? And that's probably the most, that's the scenario we see the most. I get the most phone calls from guys that pick the wrong clutch. It was on sale. A guy that didn't know what he was selling sold it to him, and now he doesn't enjoy driving the car anymore. So as far as for enjoyment of driving the car, the clutch selection is really important. And then as far as the material on how it's going to wear, how it's going to work under the circumstance it's in, is really, really important. In a drag race car, you have to be really careful if you run an organic disc material, which is the actual type of facing that's on the disc. It's pretty easy to glaze, but with that, it's super nice to drive. It's easy to drive. It's typically very linear when you let off the pedal. When you start getting into cerametallics, you start getting into a grabbier material, but that facing does not glaze like some of the organics can. So it will put up with more abuse. The next thing that goes into is the abuse that the rest of your driveline takes because of the clutch that you put in the car. So it's such a loaded question on the clutches. The clutches, I think we could spend hours on here discussing different clutches and how they can work for customers in different applications. But I will say this, that I feel that the clutch selection is probably the most important selection in a manual transmission car for a customer.
Okay, so I know that like on our personal road race car, we don't use a clutch that has a lot of organic material. I mean, for the most part, we're using a clutch that is centered iron, I guess, for the lack of a better term. And that clutch is very much on off. It is not very street friendly. And I think that a lot of people struggle with that balance between streetability and sort of an on-off clutch, like we use. That's, I guess, the pros and cons of a clutch. And then you also have a single disc clutch, and then you have dual disc clutches, which are really popular. In our car, we run a triple disc clutch, which is fairly uncommon. I guess you don't see that many people selling them, and you don't hear a lot of people that are using them. But what are the differences, the pros, the cons between a single disc, a dual disc, a triple disc clutch? And then the other thing is you've got different sizes of clutch. You've got 8.5 and you've got 7.5. And I think the clutch that we run in our car is a triple disc 5.5-inch quartermaster clutch. Kind of unique. That's something that isn't used that often. But can you tell us a little bit about the differences between single, dual, triple, why you would do one versus another? There's some science to that, and I think our viewers would be interested in hearing your thoughts on that.
Okay, so with what you're talking about first, I want to touch on that your combination there with a triple disc 5.5-inch quartermaster. That clutch, by doing the triple disc, it's able to put up with the horsepower level that you're giving it with that small clutch. The other thing that it does, it obviously has, it's lightweight. So that's the first thing everybody focuses on. Oh, we want to get this light. It's going to make the engine rev better, quicker, everything else, which it does do that. But I'm sure that you can attest to that car can barely be driven through the pits because the thing wants to buck and move around because it doesn't have any of that. It doesn't have any of that mass. So that's like, that's really a nice setup because it's forgiving when you downshift into corners. It's just when you talk about a full-on race car, that's a great setup. It's actually what I ran in my T1 Corvette as well, or my T1 style Corvette. So, but then when you start going into the street car stuff, the nice part is you're talking about the centered iron discs in the race operation. When you run a single disc clutch, say a 10.5-inch or an 11-inch single disc clutch, you can only put so much, that will only hold so much power. When it's organic disc, that may be 350 horsepower. But when you go to a centered iron disc, that's going to hold that same disc, that same pressure plate, just because of the material difference, it can hold maybe 450 horsepower, 500 horsepower, possibly. However, like you said, you're going to give up. The organic disc is going to drive nice. The centered iron is going to be on off. And when it gets hot, it's really going to be on off because it gets grabby. So it's by virtue of what you're trying to get it to do, and that the material works perfectly for that. So what's happened now is what we've seen is now there's far more twin discs and triple disc in larger sizes, say 9.5-inch, 10-inch, 10.5-inch. And by doing that, you're able to run, like we're able to run a 9.5-inch clutch with 2 organic discs that will hold up to 700 to 800 horsepower. So that will drive super nice. You have a light pedal. Everything that people want from that, you can get from that. However, you want to go past that, you want to really abuse it. Now you can put a cerametallic disc in it and it will hold up better to that abuse. It will be a little bit grabbier, but not to the point of the centered iron.
And so clutches, I guess if you buy, let's say, a clutch for a street car, okay, you're 450 horsepower, and then you decide you're going to do more open track days, or you're going to add horsepower. Are you in a scenario where you're just buying a complete new clutch assembly, or can you change the disc from one use versus another without really, purchasing a whole entire new assembly? You see people change clutch discs all the time. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the clutch disc really shouldn't be changed unless that unit is serviced by the clutch company. There's several companies out there that do service the clutches, and they will go ahead and remachine all of the faces, and then that disc, then it's okay to do that. They're setting up the height again for the finger height, which changes the clamping force. So you really shouldn't go back and forth on disc material in the same clutch. It's not good for it. Plus, you don't know what your disc started out as for thickness. So it changes a lot on how the clutch works. So it's not that it can't be done, but it really shouldn't be done.
Okay, so trust that to the professionals then, is what you're saying there. And so speaking of clutches, we get this question a lot, excessive clutch wear, and there's a lot of different reasons, I guess, why you get excessive clutch wear. But what are some of the factors there with wear, and how do you prevent excessive wear, I guess?
Well, typically excessive wear, I mean, obviously manual transmissions, it's based a lot on the driver. So it's important to not have, I would say when you pull up to a stoplight, put the car in neutral, let the clutch up. If the clutch is just barely, if it's almost not disengaged when not fully disengaged when you push your foot down, it's wearing, it's getting it warm. The next thing is obviously on the drag race side of it, it's the launching the car and slipping the clutch as you're taking off. It's something that on a street tire you have to do, but you have to recognize that with what you're doing, you're going to wear the clutch much quicker than what you would think that it would wear. In a road race application, same. What we find the most damaging thing to the clutches is downshifts into corners. And it's when somebody doesn't have they're not on the brakes soon enough and make that downshift early, just a timing thing. And you're running a pretty sticky tire. And we see a lot of times where that disc gets glazed from that, and or it takes the facing right off of one side of the disc.
I'm assuming that the downshifting also can wreak havoc on things like inner plates and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, it hurts. It can hurt all kinds of things. It's the reverse of, that on the drag race side, you're worried about what happens when you take off. And on a road race side, I've always seen most of the damage has happened on slowing the drivetrain down like that. So it's hard on the drive shaft, the U joints, the rear end. It's hard on everything. Obviously it's a known evil that you have to do, but the smoother that you are, the better it is for the clutch and the drivetrain.
So speaking of other areas of the drivetrain, we on older Mustangs we have cable clutches. On newer Mustangs we have hydraulic clutches. You see people who are taking their 5-speed out of their Fox body or their SN95 car, and they're putting in a Magnum, Tremec Magnum XL transmission. You see people who are converting from cable clutch to hydraulic clutch. You see kits available on the aftermarket to convert from cable to hydraulic clutch. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe the pros and cons of cable versus hydraulic, where you might want to change from a cable clutch to a hydraulic clutch? Is there any real reason to do it? Can you explain a little bit about the science behind the two different types of actuation of the clutch, I guess?
Well, a lot of guys like the cable clutch because it's direct. I guess the easiest thing is it's more direct. It's kind of like people talking about throttle by wire versus a throttle cable. They don't feel quite as connected when they go to hydraulic. However, with hydraulic can have a lot of benefits in the fact that depending on the hydraulic system that you put in the car, it may overcome and make a clutch that is mechanically, it's a heavy pedal. The hydraulics can help that and make that not feel that way to the customers, driving it. So that's one nice thing about the hydraulics. The next thing that's nice about the hydraulics is some of these combinations, there's not a lot of room for headers. There's not a lot of room for the cable to come through. On some of these cars, guys burn up cables all the time, too close to the heat. And in that instance, that customer's life's going to be made way nicer with a hydraulic setup. So if there's a nice hydraulic conversion for the package that a customer is working with, we would never shy away from using it. But at the same token, that cable setup, when it's done properly, it works really well too. You just have to know the combinations, that work well with it.
Most of the another question we get a lot is people are trying to take their 5-speed out and put a 6-speed in, or they're basically changing transmissions, and so you've got the older pushrod engine, you've got the 4.6 liter 2-valve and 4-valve engines, you've got the 5-liter 4-valve engine. There was even a 4.6 liter 3-valve engine as well. When you're taking a factory style transmission out, or you're switching maybe from a 5-speed to a 6-speed transmission, bell housings always seem to be the question of the day. For the most part nowadays, I guess, there are people who provide a bell housing that allow you to basically do that swap. Are those bell housings pretty readily available now? Can I just take a T56 Magnum, dump it into a Fox body, buy an over-the-counter bell housing and make everything work?
Well, yes, and that's what we do here at D&D is we put together those packages. So we started putting Viper T56 Fox body Mustangs 25 years ago. And from there, at that time, we had to make our own bell housings. Now we're able to buy bell housings that are, we can do steel bell housings. We are looking forward to being able to do aluminum bell housings probably within the next year for some of those applications. We found that not all customers need to have a steel bell housing. They may be weight conscious or whatnot. So, but yes, that's one of the things that we do here is put together that kit. We put together a kit that comes with everything that you need so that you get your bell housing, your transmission, your cross member, your wiring pigtails, your drive shaft. It's set up for your car with good U-joints, good yoke, and obviously a good material shaft. So, but yeah, that's the neatest part. In today's technology, we can do a lot of cool things. And so it's a super easy deal to put a 6-speed Magnum into one of those, into a Fox body or even some of the other older cars.
And so you touched a little bit on bell housing materials, I guess. And we hear, particularly in drag racing, I guess we hear a lot about scatter shields, or running a particular type of bell housing, that in the event that the clutch would come apart, that there's some safety factor built in there. So what are the different type of bell housings, uses, materials, things like that?
So you have steel bell housings that's what would be considered a scatter shield, and that would be obviously have far better protection for you, for your legs in the car if you had a catastrophic failure. A lot of that has come from in the 50s. Chevy had a lot of issues with their flywheel and clutch combination failing, and there's just horrific pictures of, those clutches coming through the floor, through the dash, through the front window, and that stuff. I mean, it can still obviously happen. So customers call us all the time and they ask, well, what would you do? Would you recommend going to steel? Because steel bell housings are more money. Obviously, they're more expensive. But I always tell people, I can't. Your legs are your legs; they're not mine. So you have to make that decision based on what you're doing with a car. A typical street car has no issues at all running an aluminum bell housing. But a car that you're going to, that's going to see some abuse, or heavy abuse, it's not a bad idea, obviously, to put a steel bell housing in. Especially today's steel bell housings are light years ahead of what we're installing 20 years ago in the cars that were miserable to work with and didn't fit well at all. And now we have much better equipment to use.
Okay, so that's great information, and so we have a lot of questions that are coming in from viewers, and I want to get to those so that we can be sure we address and answer all of those questions. But I do have one last question for you, and this is the last piece of the puzzle, I guess, when it comes to driveline. Is let's talk about drive shafts. You've got the factory drive shaft, some of which are single piece, I guess, drive shafts. You've got drive shafts that are two section or two drive shafts that are stuck together in the middle with some little funky thing. And then you've got steel drive shafts, and you've got aluminum drive shafts, and you've got carbon fiber drive shafts. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in drive shafts, going from a two-piece drive shaft to a one-piece drive shaft, steel, aluminum versus carbon fiber? Give us the lay of the land there, I guess.
So I'll start off with the two-piece to one-piece, because that's an important factor for people. And in some of the late model cars, some of the, like, say, the S197 or the S550 Mustangs, NVH, noise, vibration, harshness, it's really difficult. It's something that you battle with the cars. So you have to be very careful with what you do with drive shafts in those cars, because it's amazing how easily they will have a vibration at a specific speed. So we're very careful with what we do with those. When we do a one-piece drive shaft in those Mustangs, there's only one manufacturer that we use for them, and they are very stringent on the balance of them. Now, as far as some of the other packages that we do, really the materials, it depends on what you're doing with the car, again, just like everything else. But there's steel drive shafts, there's chromoly steel drive shafts, aluminum drive shafts, and carbon fiber drive shafts. I would say 90% of people, an aluminum drive shaft is the best answer for their vehicle. It takes some weight out of the car, and it will hold up to. We say the shafts that we sell for our packages are for up to 1,000 horsepower. So now past that, when you get into some of the more, you can go from that to a chromoly drive shaft, which puts the weight back in the car, but it's a one-piece tube, and it's not a seam tube. And that you can build that, and that will hold up to more than what that aluminum one would, but you put the weight back in the car. Then past that, you'd go to a carbon fiber drive shaft, which the nice part about the carbon fiber is, and nobody buying an expensive drive shaft wants to hear this, but the good part about the carbon fiber drive shaft is if it were to fail, typically the carbon kind of blows into pieces and it doesn't do near the damage to the underbody of the car, or, it's safer as far as for coming into the car if a customer does not have what he needs for a drive shaft loop. So in our Pro Mod, we only run a carbon fiber shaft, and obviously that's 4,000 horsepower. But the main thing is on one of those cars, I've seen it where even with a drive shaft loop with a protector, like a tunnel that's actually made to contain a drive shaft, I've seen one of those where when a steel drive shaft has failed, it's literally it's broken apart the entire rear suspension and the whole center of the car. It's broken it dang near half out of the car. So it basically totals the car. So going to that carbon fiber can help alleviate that kind of thing.
I guess the only downside I've heard about with carbon fiber drive shafts, particularly if you're using them on a street car, in some cases even on an open track or a road race car, is you've got all kinds of stuff flying up from the racetrack that essentially are hitting the drive shaft. And what I've heard, I want you to elaborate on this briefly, is if you have rocks or a piece of metal or anything like that comes up off the racetrack and it hits the carbon fiber drive shaft, it can leave little nicks or abrasions on the drive shaft. And I've heard that is potentially the biggest cause of failure with a carbon fiber drive shaft. Is that true?
And I could see that definitely as a cause of failure, especially like you said, in a road race application. I'm trying to bridge what we do here with the drag race stuff, but those are considerations for a road race application. If it were up to me, most road race applications that we would sell to a customer would be aluminum.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. So, Cari, we've got a lot of questions that have come in. I don't know if we want to do the trivia winner now, or if we want to give it a little while. And again, we've got lots of questions and lots of comments. So do you want to start, Cari, or do you want me to start?
Yeah, I think since we're running up to the hour, Donnie, can you stay for a few more minutes? Or
Yep.
Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
Great. So I just have a couple of things to announce, and I think one of them will be the trivia winner. But next week we are having Jeff Lucina on at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So Cars and Coffee next week at 10 o'clock. Jeff Lucina is a co-owner of Track Guys. They ran a lot of track events, and right now he's general manager at Hastings Motorsports Track.
Park.
Park.
Motorsports Park Hastings.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. And so he's going to share a lot of information about track, different things about that he's experienced with teaching, driving, and now being a general manager of a track. So he should be interesting. He can carry the conversation all by himself. Brad and I wouldn't even have to be here. You'll see when you meet him. If you saw the PRI episode that we did, he was the one that was going to all the booths and talking about the different products for us. So he should be a lot of fun next week. Also, if you're viewing in a replay right now and you'd like to catch some live versions, please go to our YouTube channel, Kenny Brown Performance TV, and just subscribe, like, and click the bell, and then you will receive a notification a few minutes before we're going to start the show. That's always nice. I know when I get involved in a project, I forget and then I get that little click of a bell, and I say, oh yeah, I'm going to click on that and listen to while I'm doing whatever else I'm doing. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. I think, Brad, we will give away the weekly giveaway this week. So, Brad, do you want to tell them what the question was again? And then I have the winner.
Okay, yeah. So the question at the beginning of the show was, what year was the manual transmission first introduced? And so this would be to the automotive world, I guess. And Cari, who's our winner on this?
Our winner is Fred Francher. He was the first one to answer. Yeah. So we had 4 people answer. We had about 7 people try. 4 people got the correct answer, but I thought, well, let's take the first one because they were the fastest to type it in. So Fred Francher, you win the D&D shirt along with the autographed hero card.
And I want to give a special shout out to the other people who got it correct as well. Jim Flaherty, Jorge got it correct. Joe Johnson, Fred Francher, as you mentioned. Jorge also noted that in 1894, which was when the first manual transmission was introduced or used, it was on a Mercedes vehicle. So 1894 on a Mercedes, and Dylan, being the person that he is, he took it a little bit further, and he noted that 1891 is when the patent for the manual transmission was first introduced. And oddly enough, I don't know if you knew this or not, Don, but the first manual transmission was chain driven.
I did not know that. I'm learning. As a manual transmission guy, I'm learning some things this morning. So yeah, I thought that was interesting that patent was applied for, 3 years previously to when it was released.
Yeah, so that's really, really cool information. We've got some great comments. Tim Allen, who is he's a loyal viewer. He's a loyal Kenny Brown customer, but he is also, more importantly, he is a Kenny Brown Speed Therapy Academy alumni member. And Tim Allen says that it personally bought my Crate Cobra 5-speed transmission from Don Jr. back in the late 1990s. What was the price? Brand new OE or OE Crate Cobra transmission was $799. So think about that. If we could only go back to the 1990s, right? He can't remember exactly how much money he spent, but it was a great rock bottom price. He's probably got the receipt, I'm sure, because he saves everything. And he says Don also recommended and sold me a Vallejo clutch kit. That's one that I've not heard of. Had a great price, great performance.
So Vallejo, they are actually the manufacturer of many pressure plates that other companies use. So we were just direct with Vallejo, and we're able to sell the actual Cobra pressure plate that they put in the vehicle as OE, and we just sold it with a better disc for that application. But he's definitely making me feel old knowing that we were able to sell those transmissions for $799 when a new T5 today is $1,949. So it would be fun to go back in those times and have transmissions for that kind of money. So
yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, well, that's what inflation is, I guess. So the good news is he still has that transmission and that combination in his Fox body Mustang. So that's really cool to hear.
That's great news. We love hearing those stories.
Yeah, no, we love to hear those from our customers as well. We've got another question, and I want to get to this one. This person, JL, who's communicating with us via YouTube and viewing today on YouTube, he asked a question earlier this week And then he posed another question today after he joined the live broadcast. But he wants to know, is there anything D&D can do to the off-the-shelf T56 Magnum transmission that can strengthen it to hold even more power? Also, what is this very loud droning noise at 2,000 RPMs coming from the T56 transmission that a lot of people apparently have experienced?
So there's all kinds of things that we can do, as far as trying to make them a little bit stronger. But the truth is the transmission is phenomenally strong the way it is out of the box. Most of what we do improves how they shift, which again, they shift great, but we can make improvements to that. So we have better materials to run in the blocker rings. We have better fork pads to put on the shift forks. We can do cryo and to the gears, and also do different super finishes to the gears. I don't feel for most applications that is needed. So we have some turbocharged Vipers out there running around with basically stone stock Magnums with just our upgrades to the blocker rings and the fork pads, and blueprinting it as far as setting all the tolerances for all the bearing preloads and everything that we want. We have packages like that are out there making 1,200 horsepower to the tires and living like that. So that's the unit's a really good unit out of the box.
Okay, and so JL's second question is it ever necessary to have a transmission cooler on a T56 Magnum? And I know that we use transmission coolers extensively on our road race cars, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on that.
So it definitely is needed in a road race application, for certain. It is. It's your enemy is the trans temp, the fluid temperature. You only have just under 4 quarts of fluid in that transmission. So especially when it's up in a tunnel with an exhaust next to it and everything else, there's a lot of heat built. So a cooler is very important in a track car, in a track day car, or an actual, obviously road race car. Then the other thing with the Magnums is it's very important on where that fluid is introduced back into the transmission. We actually have found that running a pumping the fluid out of the trans and back into the trans, out of the back of the transmission, and pumping it back into the front near the headset of the transmission, the cluster and the input shaft, that just doing that on some of these high horsepower half-mile cars that we work with, that can save a transmission's failure immensely. I mean, we've taken cars that are breaking transmissions each weekend, doing nothing else to the transmission except making sure that it has oil where it needs to have oil, and it solves the problem. So that's I guess that's the short of it. That's probably more important than the cooler on, say, a high horsepower street car. But on anything that you're going to run around a road course, I think that they should have a cooler.
Okay, great. So that's good information and a rock solid recommendation there. The next question we have is from Jim Flaherty. He says, I have a stock MT82, and I often read that replacing the clutch will make much improvements in shifting issues versus the stock setup. Is that correct?
The stock clutch for an MT82 car, I mean, they work well. The main question is to make sure that your clutch is disengaging properly. And the easiest way to do that is to park the car on level ground and let the car come to a complete idle with the clutch up in neutral, and push the clutch down, count to 5, and just put it in first gear. If the car tries to move at all, then the clutch is not disengaging fully. And then at that point, then it would be a big deal to obviously get a clutch in the car that disengages fully. But I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a thing with an MT82. It's just more in general.
Okay, perfect. So that's really good information too. We get a lot of questions on MT82 transmissions, and we get even more complaints about them. So for whatever that's worth, we've got Joe Johnson.
Brad, yeah. Real quick, let me just talk about that for a second. And not we don't do much with MT82s here, but what we find is the biggest issue with any of the MT82s is that the transmission, the shifter is remote mounted. So you have a transmission that has, obviously the shifter's mounted to the body of the car, and then also with this mechanical mechanism going to the transmission itself. And then you have rubber mounts for your motor, for your transmission. And so you have this combination that's the engine and transmission is moving different from where the shifter is in the car. So one of the major things that happens with that setup is obviously the shift quality gets bad when the motor and trans are rocking all over the place and the shifter's hooked to the car. So that's been one of the biggest issues that we've seen with those. Obviously they have other problems with them, like anything else, but that is one of the big issues, is that remote mounted shifter. And that's the reason why when we put a Magnum in those cars, people like that direct mounted shifter to the trans, so that it does not have any of that. Now, with that being said, also what the reason the manufacturers went to that is because it takes some of that NVH out of the car. So one of your comments was about with the Magnums that there's some noise, NVH issues with the trans at 2000 RPM. I don't know that it's really 2000 RPM, but it varies, say from 1700 to 2200 RPM with different combinations. That noise that people are getting from doing that, a lot of that is it's being brought up into the cockpit of the car because of the direct mounted shifter. So you have some give ups when you go to a shifter that you're going to love how it shifts. It's very direct feeling. To me, it's the best way for it to be. You are going to have that give up that some of that NVH is going to come up through that shifter to the person. And it's the reason why BMW and Mercedes and all these other companies, they all do remote mounted shifters for that reason, but it's not for performance for sure. And it's not for feel. It's to take that NVH out. The other thing real quick, and I hate to get long winded on this, but on a lot of that noise that people are talking about coming through the transmission, that's clutch related noise. And when a manufacturer, Ford, Chevy, anybody else, when they're working with a combination with a clutch disc, it's a sprung hub clutch in a factory car. And that has, it just has little springs in it to help dampen some of these noises and things coming from the engine. And they may change those springs hundreds of times before they come up with a combination that takes that NVH out of their package. So when you're working with aftermarket and you have a different trans, a different clutch, something as simple as a different camshaft in a motor will completely change that dynamic and bring that noise in at a different RPM or whatnot. So like I said, that whole topic of clutches we could spend hours on it to really inform people about all the different things, but that is really what is generating that noise.
Okay, so that's great, great information, and thanks for kind of elaborating a little bit more on that. Joe Johnson, who's another alumni member, he's a hardcore track junkie. He's had probably 5 different, at least, road race cars in the last 20 years, but he had a 2012 Boss 302S, and he replaced the transmission in that car with the R model transmission, which he liked better. He felt like it shifted better, although that's not available anymore. Is that something that you guys offer?
No, I'm sorry. Say that again. What did he have in it originally?
So he had a Boss 302S, but apparently they had a Boss 302R model as well, and apparently there is a difference in the transmission. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, it's different ratios, but it is a Magnum XL based trans. It does have different ratios, but those ratios are not available commercially.
Okay, gotcha. So Joe, if you're still viewing, that's the answer to your question there. We've got several people who are leaving some great comments. Our friend Lance from Fox Body FX says this is good tech as always. He really appreciates the wealth of knowledge that you're providing for us here today. Bob Jones, who's another alumni member, his question or comment is, what's the interplay between transmission gearing and rear axle gearing in terms of what's available, desirable for each? And I think we touched on that earlier, the relationship between the transmission gears and the rear axle gears. I don't know if you have any more input on that or not.
Not really, other than what we spoke about, but it's really just, you can figure out the speeds that a car will go. If you know the ratios, you can figure out that speed that the vehicle will go given the ring and pinion. There's a bunch of calculators online that will help you with that. And that's probably the best way to do that. That way you have an idea. Sometimes you have to drive the car too to see what that dynamic actually is, because on paper it just may look different than what it is. But that's a great way to get an idea of what you want. But again, we're always here. If somebody's thinking about going a certain direction, I'm happy to talk it over with them and try and make sure that they get what they need the first time.
Okay, good. So we've got some more questions that are continuing to come in. This always happens when we have great tech experts like you, Don.
Appreciate that.
So the MT82, I guess that was used 2011 on up in the Mustang, and it seems to be that the default solution for the shortcomings of the MT82 is just to swap it with a Tremec XL. Is the MT82, in most cases people destroy these things, are they salvageable at all, or is the general rule of thumb is just ditch the MT82 and go straight to an XL?
Well, there are some solutions out there for the MT82 to build them into something better. But what I see is that the cost to build them into something better is the same or close to what it would be to run a Magnum in the car. And I feel that the Magnum Trans is far superior in every way. It's much heavier duty. I just think it's a far superior unit. So that is the reason why we haven't gone down the path of doing anything with the MT82s, because of what we've seen from them. When we've spent some time with them apart, looking at the design, and just decided that we felt that it was better off to utilize the Tremec.
Okay, good. So we've got Tim Allen says that it sounds like the clutch selection would make sense to get a personal consult, and so yeah, you're correct, Tim. If you're looking at upgrading the clutch or the transmission or anything else really in your car, driveline related, I know if I was going to do that, my first call would be to Donny Walsh Jr. at D&D Performance, and I guess I strongly encourage everybody out there who is looking at upgrading the transmission, upgrading the clutch, going from a cable to a hydraulic or vice versa, I strongly recommend that you reach out to the folks at D&D Performance and ask those questions. They're happy to talk to you. They're going to give you great information. And before you read things online on forums or anywhere else on the internet and get the general opinion of people who may or may not be quote unquote experts, if it's me personally, I'm going to reach out to Donny Jr. And I'm going to get the answer straight from the man who's the expert himself. So please, everybody out there, if you're thinking about making an upgrade, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem, reach out to Donny. Okay, so we've got Joe Johnson has another comment. I have had 2 dual clutches in my Shelby GT350 fail. It was always the inner plate which failed, not the plate against the flywheel. Both failures were during the first 2,000 miles of the car. So Joe's car, GT350, I don't think it's ever been driven on the street, and it probably has at least, I would say, 6,000 or going on 6,000 track miles. Does that seem to be the normal general failure for the GT350 transmission? And is that more so a result of downshifting as opposed to anything else?
Well, with his question, I don't know if that's an aftermarket clutch or if that's the factory unit.
That's the factory clutch.
It is the factory clutch. So with it being the factory clutch, I'm surprised that it's picking on one disc versus the other. But it's definitely, it's an organic disc. So if it is a road race deal, it's probably being damaged on the downshifts, and I would say that's the cause of it. But it's really not the best material. If that's what the car is used for, a lot of track days, a lot of track miles, really should try and find something with a cerametallic material on it, and so that it'll live through that heat.
Okay, that's great information, and I would second that recommendation. Although I think Joe has the car for sale now because he's ready to step up and get into something that's a little bit better. I say that laughingly because Joe thinks he's going to retire from driving his car on the racetrack, and even at his age, I just don't see it happening. But Jorge has got kind of a common question. He's asking about clutch chattering. I know a little bit about that because the clutch that I run is so aggressive that you get a little bit of clutch chatter. But so what's the primary cause of that? Is it just material related primarily?
So clutch chatter can be caused from a lot of different things, but the most common thing for clutch chatter would be the material. You're going with an aggressive material, so it's grabby. And when you have, when it does that, it causes that chatter. The next thing is if a lot of times the customer puts a new clutch in with an old flywheel, doesn't resurface it, takes a 2-inch grinder and, or sands on it. And that, if it's not a flat surface, it's really easy to create that chatter. So that finish is really important as well. We don't cut any flywheels on anything that we do in our shop. We put new flywheels in a car when it's time to put a new clutch in. So I guess that would be the easiest thing to say is most clutch chatter is caused by the type of material used, but it can also be caused by the flywheel surface and or the break-in period. If a customer does not take the time to break in a clutch, it is very easy for that clutch to chatter throughout its entire life. So,
okay, good. So Now I want to get like really serious for a minute because we have a question from Dylan Calkins, who is another one of our Speed Therapy Academy alumni members. He's from North Dakota, and he always has the most interesting technical questions. And so his question for you, Donny, is what are your thoughts on things like isotopic surface finishing on gears or bearings and the benefits of lower friction, lower oil temps, and improved wear resistance from that type of process? And is it really worth the cost of doing it?
So so it definitely can help certain things. I would probably recommend for most applications it is not needed. There are some applications that it is. I shouldn't say needed, but it can definitely help certain things. But it's not something that we do a lot of here because of we do mostly street track, weekend track cars and whatnot. When we're doing something for a full-on race car and we're looking for every last little bit, we will do it. But I don't feel that the cost is, I don't feel that it's cost effective for most of our customers.
Okay. So that's great. And again, that was a little bit over my head. I'm not quite familiar with isotopic surface finishing, but, and maybe we shouldn't elaborate on that either. But we do have a question from another viewer.
I'm going to stop you just for a minute, Brad. We keep having more and more questions come in. We're going to have to shut it off pretty soon because I know Donny is very busy today. I think you have customers waiting for you. So we'll probably go another 5 minutes. And then we're going to have to, I don't know what we're going to do with all the questions that haven't been answered yet. I don't know, Donny, if you can come on another show or
I would love to. I'd love to do that and answer some more of those questions. One question that I saw come up, I've missed a lot of them as we've been talking, but one question that I saw come up was somebody had a 2.3 4-cylinder Mustang that they wanted to that transmission specific to that unit. It has a different size pilot for the input shaft. And they asked if that could be machined down on a V8 transmission to put in that car. The answer is it can be. It has to be done correctly. The correct way to do that, or what we do to do that, is we actually cut it down past that point. We hard weld it, and then we remachine it. Then it can still be used with a pilot bearing. The other thing that you can do is, I believe Rapido still has a bronze bushing that goes in the 2.3 crank and allows you to use the V8 trans with its larger pilot in your engine. So I just wanted to answer that. I saw that, and that has come up quite a bit over the years. So.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad that you picked that up. I hadn't gotten that far yet, but so that is a great question because there are a lot of people out there who are still working and with those cars, building or restoring those cars as well. I know the last Mustang event I went to, I saw at least 5 SVOs there, which blew me away. Okay. Do we have any more questions that you want to get into, Cari, or you want me to ask a couple more? I know that one of them we had is electronic rev matching. Is that good to reduce wear in the transmission and clutch, or is that even a thing?
Well, it definitely will reduce wear. There's no doubt about that, because typically an electronic system is going to be better than most individuals. So it definitely will. For myself, I don't like it. I would rather, I enjoy doing, driving a car and rev matching and whatnot on my own. So.
Okay, perfect. Let's see if we've got maybe one more here.
Oh my goodness, Brad. We have 1 minute left. 1 minute left, everybody, until 11:30.
One more. People love the discussion on NVH as well. And I know, JL, if you're still viewing with us today, feel free to give Don Jr. a call. I'm sure that you can pick his brain just about any time you want during normal business hours, of course. Let's see. Do we have anything else here that's good?
I think we should wrap it up, and we'll keep the mystery until Donnie joins us again.
Actually, we did get through most of the questions. I know Tim Allen's got a few more questions, but Tim, you're obviously a customer or a previous customer of Don Jr., so I'm sure that he would love to hear from you again, since it's been 20 years since you purchased your last transmission from him. But
yeah, Tim, you need to get out there and beat that car up a little bit more so we can get to know each other better.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. Tim has been working on this car for a while, and I personally can't wait to see him get back on track with it, or at least get it back on the street. He lives in New Jersey, and his car, unfortunately, is probably not that far away from you, Don, in Michigan, so he doesn't get the opportunity to spend time with it very often. And thank you, Calvin Goring, who's viewing today. He says that Brad is relentless, and yeah, that's right. You get me into the Q&A, and I won't stop. So, but today I'm going to stop, and we're going to wrap it up. And man, I really appreciate all the viewers and all the great questions today, and I appreciate even more.
And I do too. I really appreciate everybody being on today. It's been a lot of fun doing this, and I love sharing the information. And I want to thank all of our customers, any of them that are on. 33 years ago, we started out to do this as a little part-time gig in a basement, and to help with the racing. And I just wanted to do it each year. I wanted to do it one more year. I didn't have to go out and get a real job. And here we are today, where we've been able to do this. It's definitely become a real job, but not as real as some others. So I really enjoy it, and I enjoy what we do here. And I thank my customers and everybody out there for supporting us.
Well, thank you, Donnie. We have thoroughly enjoyed you. I told you that people were waiting to hear from you, and we have a lot of viewers that view live, but a lot that view after the fact. So if you're viewing after the fact, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get notifications. And Donnie, why don't you tell us one more time how people can get a hold of you? What's your website and Instagram and all that stuff?
Our website is www.ddperformance.com. You can call us at 248-735-6220, or you can reach out to us on Instagram. It's D_performance. So any of those ways, and you can always by email. You can email me directly. My email is don@ddperformance.com. That's a really good way to get a hold of me when we get very, very busy, and that is a great way to get through to me.
I am surprised you're so courageous to share your email address.
Yeah, I am too, but I do like to be able to answer questions, and sometimes it's very hard to get all the phone calls returned, and like I said, we get swamped, and there just never seems to be enough of any of us here. So
that's true. And as you see, Donnie is very personable and there to help anybody out, and that's the kind of suppliers we like to use. So that's why we're associated with D&D Performance. Donnie, it's been great having you, and obviously we're going to have you again. I figured
awesome.
It would happen. And Brad, is this our longest Cars and Coffee show? Has he beat the record now? I think
no, I don't think he's beat the record. Wes Dunkel was on for about an hour and 45 minutes. So okay. I think this episode is definitely in the top 3.
Well,
and here's another piece of trivia. This is our 97th live cars and coffee show that we have done in the last roughly 2.5 years. And you would think after 97 episodes that we would have our act together in terms of technology and everything else. But practice does not always make perfect. And even after 96,
it's not perfect.
It's not really our fault. It's absolutely 100% the technology. So we're hoping that.
So a funny thing about that this is the 97th episode that is my road race number on my car.
Oh,
How about that?
Wow, that's pretty cool. That is awesome. That is awesome.
And I would definitely want to break that record because I like doing that. So I would like to stay on for another 10 minutes. But I have a customer that's driven all the way from Canada to meet with me this morning to get his transmission package. And he has been patiently waiting in the background for about 15 minutes. So again, I really appreciate having me on. And I hope that I was able to answer some questions for people.
You were incredible, Donny. Thank you again so much. And again, next week, we will be having Jeff Lucina on live, and he will be talking. Brad, you've talked to him. What's he going to talk about?
So Jeff is, he's our former roving reporter from the PRI show. He is going to be talking about all things racetracks. And so as mentioned before, Jeff is the operations manager at Motorsports Park Hastings in Hastings, Nebraska. He's got a long history in the automotive aftermarket. He's worked for ProCharger. He's done a lot of work for Kenny Brown Performance as well. He's a glorified member of our family. He's managed a couple of different racetracks. He has, with his partners, Track Time Driving Schools, which we've done a lot of events with in the past, and he's a wealth of knowledge. We'll be able to ask him a lot of questions, but we're going to talk about the ins and outs of managing a racetrack, repaving a racetrack, upgrading a racetrack, and so that'll be a great show for us, and we look forward to seeing everybody next Saturday with us live, and Jeff Lucina to learn a little bit more about some different things.
That sounds good. And again, thank you, Donny. I don't know if you've seen in the comments, you're still with us. I'll just read. I don't know if you've seen some of the comments. Thanks, Don. This is great. Thanks a lot, Don, for being on this morning. This has been great information. Big thanks to Don this morning. Thank you, team. Tim Allen's going to try to stop by next time he's in Michigan. Great information, super information, awesome story. I mean, Donny, people just love you. So thank you very much, and we appreciate it. And we wish you well with your customer. I know he's waiting patiently. So,
All right. Well, thanks again.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you're
it.
a superstar. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Everybody have a great day. We'll see you next Saturday.
Bye-bye.